What's up, everyone? Just hopping on here. Let me see. Testing some new setups. So let's go ahead and see how this works out. I'm also going to be streaming on Instagram and YouTube at the same time. So let me just go ahead and get that going. Let me see. Where did this thing go? Tampa, thanks for hopping on. Martin, currently have an internship in real estate. What do you think about a career in CRE versus tech sales? I mean, they're two, totally kind of different areas. Commercial real estate, tech sales. I mean, they're both. Yeah, I mean, there isn't too much overlap. Although I do have a lot of coworkers that do get involved in real estate as well. Real estate is actually one of those things that you potentially could do at the same time as tech sales in some capacity, but. I think the long-term earning potential is probably higher in tech sales unless you have access to a lot of capital, or maybe you're joining like a family firm or something like that. Your company changed the structure of qualified meetings. I mean, that happens quite a bit. I just had my sales plan changed mid half. It's not typical, but yeah, I mean, expect a lot of change for sure. Change is constant, especially if you're at a smaller startup. They're constantly, trying to figure things out. Hopefully it's for the better. And hopefully, if you're not hitting your quota, oftentimes what they'll do is they should still like have some protections in place. So like if you don't hit your quota, that at least like they'll pay you as if on the old plan. Could you please repeat? Yeah, sure. So commercial real estate, tech sales, I mean, two totally different career paths. I mean, your day-to-day is going to be very, very different. I will say, though, that I do know a lot of people that do real estate and tech sales at the same time. So, and I think it probably is a little easier to do that on the commercial real estate side than on the residential real estate side. Because on residential, you might be doing like open houses and stuff like during like your normal 9 to 5. I think commercial is a bit more flexible there. He's back. Yeah, I'm back. Let me know how this streaming setup looks like. And that reminds me, I'm supposed to get it started on Instagram, so we'll check that out. Any side hustles? Yeah, I mean, for sure. In my experience, you try to do something that like you're interested in. So think about your hobbies, and you'd be surprised at like how many of those you can potentially monetize. I mean, you have to become an expert in it, or there needs to be some like information arbitrage. So for me, a big one is cars. So I'm really into like collector cars, and I have a lot of specialized knowledge there. So I'm able to identify. Basically identify really good deals, and then I make money on that. I don't flip a lot of cars, but I was actually counting, and between cars and motorcycles over the past since I was 16, I just turned 32. It was like 30 or 31 vehicles, so I've done quite a bit there. Let me see, 1 second here. I'm just starting the stream on Instagram. Trying to do like this multi-stream setup, and I don't know if it's gonna like make a difference or not, but sure, why not? So I'm doing that, and then let me just start the YouTube stream too. Oh, cool. Okay. Awesome. Cool. Advice for starting a new ISR role: 30, 60, 90 days. Yeah, those the first 30, 60, 90 days, very important. I would say first 30 days, really you're trying to learn as much as you can about all the internal processes, build out your internal network. 60 days, that's when you kind of want to start building out like your action plan. So if you're coming in an ISR and you're going to be closing, you should be developing a good understanding of the accounts that are within your territory. Look at maybe old opportunities that were closed as lost and try to identify maybe reasons why they were closed lost. Those are always good ones to potentially revisit. And then 90 days, that's at that point you should be executing, right? So you have all the information and the resources that you need to go ahead and actually execute on those accounts. So that's kind of a rough breakdown there. I talked about hooks and initial outreach. Not in a lot of detail, but a good resource is Mailshake. They have a cold email masterclass, so check that out. It's totally free. Just search cold email masterclass for Mailshake, and then they've got that there. Hold on, let me switch my audio real quick. All right. Let me know if this is. Oops. Let me know if this is any better or not. It's got like one of these like Yeti Bluetooth mics, but I don't think it's like the best. I need to actually replace this one with a different setup. Any IoT companies I like? Actually, like the big cloud companies, they're getting more into IoT than ever. They're developing IoT frameworks. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot more IoT startups because they're eliminating a lot of the heavy lifting. I haven't looked too closely within that space to identify like which like Series A, Series B startups I really like, but I do know that I think we're going to see a lot more action within that space. You're at AWS right now as an enterprise engage AAE. Is that a good spot to start? Yeah, for sure. AWS, they've got good career growth. I was there for about 2 years, and so I mean, hopefully you probably have a clear path, to get a promo to L5 and get that within 2 years, and get another promo, within another 2 years to L6. Then you'd be pretty set. How did I spend my first time as an SDR? First month, still trying to hit quota. I spent my first month really just actually I think I remember I went through and I was like looking at like what emails I basically at first I identified who like the top existing SDRs were, and then I kind of tried to understand like what were they doing differently than their peers. A lot of it actually came down to like the messaging and the cadence, but volume was also a big piece too. So I made a goal, like at that time, I think my specific goal within the role was like 20 leads worked per day. And, and then there were other goals for opportunities generated and everything. But I just focused on the volume number. And I basically took that and I doubled it because I wanted to get promoted as soon as possible into a closing role. And then I was on average, I think it was like hitting like 37, 40 leads worked per day. So like, this is back when actually a lot of the calls were or a lot of the leads were worked over the phone, not quite as much like email or LinkedIn. So it was a bit more time consuming, and there was also like inbound call shifts that we had to do as well. But I basically doubled that goal, and it didn't really take much for me to get to the top of the leaderboard. We had like this big leaderboard. There was like 20 SDRs, and then it was like updated in real time in terms of performance. Do you work in tech or for tech? Oh man, like so this topic is kind of annoying. I feel like people say like, oh, like if you're not a software engineer, you don't work in tech. I think it's a bit more nuanced than that, because like you could be a software engineer, for like a retail, like a grocery store chain, right? I would say you're not necessarily working in tech. Like if even though you're a software engineer, to me it's like you're software engineer working for a grocery store or whatever. I think it's the distinction is like the type of company that you're working for. Because if you're at a tech company, like one of the big cloud companies, people in like marketing, people in recruiting, HR and stuff, especially sales, they're way more technical than people in those same roles in other types of companies. So for me, I would definitely say in tech, but I always say tech sales because I think it's pretty specific. What do you think about Okta? They've been getting they've been getting destroyed on the market, but the product is actually pretty solid. I think they have some long-term potential. They have a lot of like management issues that they're dealing with right now. Operational costs are out of control. So I had someone on the last live talk about Okta. How long of being BDR would you expect to be promoted to AE? So if you're a top performing BDR, you should be getting promoted within 12 to 18 months, depending on the company and depending on when you joined. Like if you joined like right at the start of a performance review cycle, they're not going to give you a performance review that cycle. So that's going to kind of push back your potential promotion timeline. So you might be closer to 18 months. But if you're a strong performing SDR, BDR, and you're crushing your numbers, it should be about 12 to 18 months. Favorite tech product to sell? I like AI and machine learning. So like the fintech that I was at was actually a lot of fun. We had a machine learning platform for credit underwriting, and that's for me that type of technology is fun to sell because a lot of times you're selling to like very smart engineers that have been working within their field for a very long time. And to me, it's enjoyable kind of like bringing in new insights that they haven't considered before. And then also the potential impact can be pretty huge too, because you've got these companies that are, for example, on the lending side, they were literally working out of spreadsheets, and they're going from spreadsheets to machine learning models with like orders of magnitude, improvements in performance across the board. So got let go last week as a BDR. Sorry, man, it happens. Hopefully you can like learn from that. And fortunately, even though people are talking about layoffs, I think it's still a relatively good job market historically. So hopefully you can find something fairly quickly. Thanks for answering. Need advice about current AE role? Can we connect? Yeah, sure. Send me a message on Instagram or TikTok. I'll try to get to it. There's still a bunch of messages I was supposed to catch up over the weekend. And of course, got distracted with other things. So, what do you think about promotion, BDR, 8 to 10 months, then SDR, 10 to 14? So, like for companies, so not every company will have like a separate BDR and a separate SDR role. A lot of times, like it's either one or another, and they kind of interchange them. But if they do have both, that's pretty typical. You'll do 8 to 10 months and then another about year for the AE. So definitely pretty typical there. You have a second interview with Amazon Thursday for senior tech sales role. Any advice? Yeah, so good luck. Great that you got that second interview. So I'm assuming that's before the loop. So even before the loop though, the interviews before the loop, they're really looking for that those are going to be the most in-depth in terms of like getting an understanding of your specific technical background and sales background, and making sure that you'll be a good fit for the role. And then of course for the loop, I'm sure the recruiter told you it's all about tying your experiences back to those Amazon leadership principles. It's all basically tied to that. Currently realtor, do you think that will translate? Sure, yeah. Realtor will it depends on what type of realtor you are, right? So, some realtors, they do a lot of prospecting themselves. They get all their leads. Other ones are more of a relationship sales. So like if you're going into like an SDR role, for example, from being a realtor, and you don't have a lot of prospecting experience or background, then it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, but I don't think it's anything you can't overcome. You helped me learn about tech, left retail. Thanks so much. Yeah, man, happy to help. Absolutely. This is why I kind of do this. Like for me, I think I did one of the videos where I talk about my background. So both my parents immigrated from Poland in their early 20s. They didn't have college degrees, no English, or had money or or anything like that. So I didn't have any industry connections. I went to public schools, state schools, had a pretty modest upbringing, and then stumbled into tech myself. I did biomedical engineering, was planning on doing medical school, and then I kind of lost the passion after like working for a bit as a nursing assistant, and then doing a bunch of like volunteering and stuff in the hospital. I realized probably wouldn't be happy in the role. I'm glad that I didn't make that move. And then started working in like tech support, but wasn't really happy with how much I was earning. So I moved to Austin in like 2014. Was making 62K, which at the time wasn't bad, because no state income tax in Austin and in Texas in general. And this was before, Austin already had a bit of a boom, but it was before like the last boom that we had during COVID. So like I was paying like $550 for a 1 bedroom, like 1,000 square foot 1 bedroom, like literally like 4 miles from downtown. And then like later moved into like a 2 bedroom to get more room, like 1,500 square feet for like $950. So super cheap, but I was always like a big car guy, motorcycle guy. Wanted to earn more money. So I was researching different careers, and basically was literally looking at like highest paying careers or highest paying jobs. I remember I was like looking through like Glassdoor and stuff. And then I saw like enterprise software sales, and hadn't heard of it. I completely wrote off sales, started doing some more digging, shadowed some folks internally within the company I was at. Thought that I might try it out, moved into an SDR role, did really well, got promoted. But as this was a hardware test and measurement company, and hardware does not pay as much as software. So I ended up leaving for a cybersecurity company, and then a few other roles there too. Acne these days, stressed. It actually did flare up. It's pretty annoying. Yeah, it was like in the last like 6 or 8 weeks, and it was like a little stressful or changing seasons, but hopefully it should clear up soon. I was also like off on my like diet and exercise routine. I'm finally getting back into it, and like all that stuff adds up there. Why did I move from Austin to Chicago? Great question. So, moved from Austin to Chicago. Oh wait, am I? I didn't even realize my other thing is not streaming properly. Oops. There we go. These comments were supposed to be like updating in real time, so it's kind of funny. I didn't even realize that. But yeah, so moved from Austin to Chicago, mostly for family reasons. So both me and my wife, we grew up in the Chicago suburbs, and we had one kid at the time, but we were trying for our second, and it's way easier having 2 kids when you're around grandparents. So that was really kind of like the main driving factor. COVID lockdowns are starting to happen. Daughter's like preschool closed down, and then we're kind of like thinking about like everything's going remote, so might as well move back to Chicago for a bit. It wasn't meant to be like long term, but here we are 2 years later, and probably do another couple years or so, and then kind of evaluate from there. But still have the places in Austin. Do you think your patch matters when you hit quota? Yeah, absolutely. Patch definitely matters for sure. Sometimes it is like luck of a draw. Like you get a territory with like a bunch of opportunities that are mid-flight, that are kind of like layups, easy to close, and like historically, for example, selling software, West Coast or Bay Area territories typically would perform the best, just because you would have a lot of up and coming startups that would spend a lot of money or kind of be like the key customers. So yeah, absolutely, patch definitely plays a factor in it, but it's not the only factor for sure. I have seen people go into like absolutely garbage territories and then blow out their number, and sometimes it's a benefit, right? If you actually have like a bad territory, right, the bar is really low, so you can definitely exceed from there. Software engineer here, you want to move to tech sales. Where do you start? Solutions engineer? Yeah, solutions engineer, sales engineer, one of the more technical roles. That's a pretty common move from software engineer. You still get the customer facing experience, you're working on deals, but you don't have all of like the territory management and the other like sales activities. that an account executive has to do. And then if you really enjoy that role, you can definitely move from that to like a pure sales role, like an account executive. I ended up doing that myself. You're an entrepreneur, work at a call center. Do you think it'll be hard to transition in sales? No. I mean, if you've been working in a call center, you're used to like those volumes. Nervous about the interviews. I mean, the interviews are rough, especially for that first job, but you should have a good amount of experiences from the call center gig to be able to relate that to like what you would do within software sales. Let me adjust this camera down a little bit. Freaking yeah, acne flares up just in time for the upgraded streaming setup, but you know, that's how these things go, I guess. But yeah, good luck on the interviews. I mean, practice. There's a lot of like sample questions you can look at, and you know, practice with friends, with colleagues if they're, you know, if they know that you might be going for, you know, a different position. Record yourself during the interviews. That's the best way to prepare for those. What's my LinkedIn? It's in my bio. If you click on it, TechSalesTom.com, it's got a link to all my different socials, including LinkedIn. So you can go ahead and click on that. And then you also have a link there to Tech Sales Use. That's like the free tech sales course that I've been working on for, since February, I guess. Did it with corporate bro, Ross, so super excited for it. Doing the soft launch today, so I had like a bunch of alpha customers that signed up for it, and then we're gonna be gathering feedback, and then doing the full launch in a couple weeks after that. So if you haven't signed up for it, definitely check that out. Totally free. I got offered to do other paid courses, but me personally, being in like B2B software sales, I'm more about doing larger brand partnerships, as opposed to just like making money off of like selling like a course. What's the average ETA to get hired if you have no experience? So I've coached like a bunch of people. I've lost count at this point, but I get messages almost daily from people saying that they finally got a position. The fastest that I've seen someone get a position, I think was 2 weeks. So they jumped in, they went into my Discord, followed like the step-by-step guide that I had, looked at the resources, and immediately the first day edited their resume and LinkedIn, and they started applying. And then within 2 weeks, they landed a role. Definitely faster than typical. It's going to take, sometimes these interviews at these companies can take 3 or 4 weeks or longer because there's going to be multiple rounds and there's scheduling depending on the time of year. But that was the fastest for sure that I'd seen. Yo, I broke the barrier, hit 350K as a sales engineer. That's awesome, man. Yeah, sales engineer, I feel like the barrier for a lot of sales engineers is like 150K to 200K. And then getting higher than that can be pretty tough unless you join like one of the FANGs or something and you get in at a higher level and they give you a lot of stock. But no, that's awesome. Yeah, 350 is definitely top tier money for a sales engineer. So did you take an SDR role for a company that isn't on RepView? So I mean, there's a lot of other detail I would need to really give an answer for that. Like 1, what's the offer? 2, what's the company? Definitely need to do your research and your due diligence. So, how good is their product perceived within the market? What's the background of the founders? Is this their first startup, second startup? Did they have a successful exit yet? Who's funding this startup? Is it tier 1 venture capital firms, or is it like these like just angel investors that have no experience? So, and then also you look at like what's the growth trajectory of the company? Like, has their headcount been increasing over time? You can view that on LinkedIn, for example. And then are people staying there for a long time too? One of my favorite ways to research companies is you can hit up ex-employees on LinkedIn. So you can search on LinkedIn that company name, you put it in the search bar, the company name, and then you use the filter and you do it as like previous company. And if you message people who like left in the last like 3 months or so and you ask if they have some time, you're looking at a position there and you wanted to get their feedback, they'll either tell you, yeah, it was a great company, I just moved on for a better opportunity, or they'll tell you it was basically a complete garbage, complete mess, avoid at all costs. So both perspectives are great to get. Best way to add value outside of performance. Yeah, sure. Best way for sure is think about like what your manager cares about and like how you can make your manager look good. So I mean, maybe that kind of like falls into like politics a bit, but think about it from the perspective of your manager. If you're a high performer, they want to replicate your performance, right? So the way that you do that is by building out processes and frameworks that are scalable. So whatever you're doing, try to package it up in a way that you can work with your sales manager and share with the rest of the sales team, whether it be like templates or sales strategies, anything that's like working well for you. And if you can find a way to make a process around it and then share that with your direct team and then potentially your extended team, like other like kind of going up one level. So sharing it with like other managers' teams as well. That's gonna definitely give you the best value add for sure. AE here, AI company founded by Tiger Global. Absolutely my job, but headcount is decreasing. Ooh, yeah, I mean, Tiger especially. So Tiger, they were notorious for funding, anything at any cost, and because of that, valuations were super high, and now they're kind of returning back down to earth. So I'm definitely not surprised that they're lowering headcount because companies are facing potential down rounds if they don't control their costs because revenues are potentially going down too. I will say, I guess, as long as you're a top performer, they most likely won't let go of like the entire sales team. So if you're still getting paid, it's not necessarily like a red flag, but it depends on your performance there. Go into office every once in a while, even if you work from home every day. Absolutely, yeah, going to office definitely helps, especially like for people that are early in their career. I definitely recommend going into the office more often than not, just because it's getting that face time is important. It makes it that much easier for you to network and get your name known, right? Because if you just join as like a low-level employee and you just do your core role, but you're not networking, you're not going to like happy hours, you're not going in the office, even if you're a top performer, they're not going to have you at the top of the list for promotions, right? Because at the end of the day, people promote people that they want to work with. So you need to like get that face time to actually kind of build the relationships that way. Some people call it like playing politics, but really it's like, you want to work with people that you enjoy having conversations with that are also like not work related, right? Does tech sales cause you to feel stressed, burnt out, depressed about your job often? I think, any job in tech can do that, especially at like the bigger tech companies, just because you can start to kind of like feel like you're a cog in the machine and that you're not necessarily making a big impact, even though they're like paying you a lot of money. So I've definitely been in that situation before, and that's where, you can have a few different perspectives there. One, you could like, decide that you might want to go to a smaller startup to kind of like make that bigger impact. I've run into a lot of people that have kind of gone down that route, or you can kind of just accept that you're not going to get fulfillment from your day job, and that's okay. It's okay to treat it as a job, and you can have like fun hobbies on the side, or other side hustles that you're working as well that can excite you. So, and then the other thing that's also especially important is make sure you're taking care of yourself, physically and mentally. It makes a huge difference for sure. I notice like for me myself, if I as soon as I fall off the bandwagon for eating well and exercising, like everything else just goes downhill. How did I afford 6 Teslas? Great question. Tech sales. At tech sales, and then also I just like cars, so I love getting good deals. And on all of them, I was going through, I made between like $2,000, I think was at the low end of profit, and the biggest profit that I got on one of the Teslas was like 22,000 or something like that. So, afforded it by the initial tech sales salary, but also the way that I treat cars, I almost treat cars like a savings account or whatever. So I'm not necessarily like burning money. Like if you just buy like 6 new Audis, right, for 80K each, and you trade them in every year, yeah, you're gonna be losing 20K a year. You're gonna be losing a lot of money. But if you do cars the right way, and that I just look at them a different way. I basically build upon it at this point. So first Tesla was like a $30,000, maybe it was like $32,000 Tesla Model S. It was like 6 years old, 60,000 miles on it. Wasn't quite sure about the whole Tesla thing. And then the most recent one I got, 2022 Plaid, 135K, but it just builds up from there. You're not doing well as a BDR. What would your next move be? So, not everyone enjoys the BDR role. So when I think about like my peers, when I started off as a BDR, I would say at least a third of them moved into non-sales roles, right? So there's a lot of other adjacent roles that you can go into within the company. You can go into marketing, you can go into sales operations. You could, if you want to be more technical, I've seen people go, they decide they want to go down the solutions architect path or the sales engineer path, or even software engineering, project management, product management. There's a lot of different paths too. So, but what's great is like the skills that you'll learn as an SDR, BDR will help you in any of those roles, right? In any of those roles, you're going to be selling internally one way or another. You're going to be writing emails. You're going to try to be persuasive. You're going to be working on your pitches. So they're great skills to have. And that's why when you look at, historically, most CEOs actually have like a sales background, right? It's only recently where we've been seeing some of the tech CEOs come from more of an engineering background. But even then, a lot of them are, they come from the product management side, which to me is actually a lot of that role is sales itself. Top 3 tech companies to work for. There's a lot, and it depends on what your criteria are. Some people want to work at like big tech companies with like a lot of job security, great benefits. So if that's the case, I would say Google, Microsoft, Amazon, probably in like that order. But they are very difficult to get into. And then other than that, if you want to do like startups, right? There's smaller startups, bigger startups. If I was to do a startup again, I would do Series A or Series B startup funded by like a tier 1 VC firm that just recently had a round, interested in the product. That would be kind of like my main criteria: strong founding team. And but it's hard to say just like top 3 because there's so many different factors and people weigh them differently too. Not everyone likes the startup side. They just want to make a steady 250K a year. Then big tech is great for that. SDR. So sorry guys, I'm gonna try to get through all of these questions, but if I don't get to it, I'm not skipping it. I can only answer so many. But if you do subscribe, thanks Thinker, thanks for the share, thanks for outbounding. Glad that that's working. So if you do subscribe, it's like $5 or whatever, and they just got into the program. You'll get a little badge next to your name, and I will absolutely answer any question that you put in the comments. So it's kind of like my way of like filtering whatever the stuff there. But yeah, thanks again for sharing. So I think it's supposed to like play like a sound. I was kind of playing around with it. And then if you subscribe, there's actually a funny thing that kind of pops up too. I got a GIF video that pops up. So you probably want to subscribe if you haven't, just for that. Because there's like subscribing and following. I think I did a separate one for each of those. So let me see. Or maybe maybe I can show you a preview of what that looks like. So I've never done like streaming like this before. I've only done like the lives from this thing, but yeah, so if you guys subscribe, you'll get, one of these things like your name and then, coffees for closers only. So call me Bert. Thanks for subscribing. We got a new closer. Look at that. 8 out of 13. So when I got into the sub program like a month ago or maybe 2 months ago, I've also been working on a supplier for for grass flip-flops. I did a video on them and I was like, oh, these are pretty cool. They charge a lot for them. Long story short, I'm putting in an order for like 1,000 of these things at like $250 a piece. And I'm gonna put like a Tech Sales logo or whatever on there. And I'm gonna give away 100 of them to the first 100 subscribers. So there'll be other perks too. Still trying to figure that out. But especially with like the new setup that I have here, I will definitely be doing more of these lives. Actually, like this, because like I wanted to do more like resume reviews, LinkedIn prep, and with this, actually, it's pretty cool, guys. I can like share, like my browser and stuff. I'm like, this is pretty wild. So this is actually for the course for Tech Sales U. If you guys haven't checked it out, it's in the bio. Look at that. This makes lives so much easier. So it's totally free, and doing the soft launch today for some of the lucky subscribers, and then full launch in a few weeks. Basically, I mean, it's not rocket science, right? It's 5 weeks. I'm talking about what tech sales is in general, breaking down the role, giving you basic skills for kind of like what the typical day-to-day is, interview prep, coaching prep, LinkedIn prep, resume prep, like how to do your job search. So we break it down over 5 weeks, and the goal is at the end of those 5 weeks, you should have everything that you need and to be fully applying for these roles and hopefully lining up several interviews at the same time and then negotiating offers, right? So I think to me, like the biggest barrier to entry is just breaking down all the different terms, understanding like what roles you need to apply for, how do you actually interview and answer these interview questions. It's not something that comes naturally, the way that you answer these types of questions, right? And I think that's where we see a lot of like the lack of diversity sometimes in some of these companies, just because if you don't have like parents that worked in the industry or friends that worked in the industry, it can be really tough. Like I mean, I basically stumbled my way in without any of that. So, and I get that a lot from people too. Before they tell me before they saw my content, they didn't realize that this industry existed. They had no idea where to start, and they were able to do this and get in. Like my favorite one is one of my old friends. He had a friend who was working as an imaging technician, medical imaging technician. He was doing this for like 7 years, super burned out. He wasn't happy with his earning potential. He was making like $60K a year, but that's pretty much like the ceiling for what he was doing. And he was just feeling really down because he knew that like for the next 10 years or whatever, that's pretty much what he could expect from a day to day. I walked him through what the role was, gave him tips on like how to interview, what companies to apply for, and how to stand out. And within like a month, he actually landed a role as a sales development representative, making, I think for him it was like 90K OTE, so pretty significant boost, which was awesome, and it was like life changing for him and his family. And then now he's on a great career path with a ton of like earning potential, and so that's the type of stuff that makes me kind of enjoy this. Always like when I was growing up, I always kind of like learning about random topics. Like I did cross country and track, and I always had like these obscure facts in the back of my head. I don't know if it was like ADHD or something that made me go down these rabbit holes, but I've always liked kind of like digging deep into topics and then sharing it. So that's what I'm doing here. Jason, thanks for the roses. Thanks again, man. Kevin, just can't pass the 3rd round interview. Any tips or resources? Yeah, so great question. So how many of these interviews did you do? So like if it's just like one interview that you can't get past the 3rd round, sometimes that happens. They're interviewing multiple candidates, and even if you do really well, they might go with someone that has a little bit more experience or did a little bit better, and sometimes it's just the luck of the draw. What can help you for sure, if you're not doing this already, is make sure you're getting referrals. Referrals will make a very, very big difference, especially if they're on the edge between 2 candidates or if you don't have a lot of like direct industry experience. The referral will definitely help fill that gap. So actually, I've done a few videos on like how you can get referrals, and actually touch on that in the course too. Tech sales is not for the weak. You have to love the game. Sales and tech is rough and a grind. Absolutely, yeah. You can't get you can't get too discouraged. I mean, it's a numbers game at the end of the day. Like you're gonna get way more no's than yeses, and you have to have thick skin, and not only from customers, but sometimes like your sales managers can be pretty rough on you, especially like when it comes to like forecasting and account plans. Like you're gonna get like a lot of like feedback. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but yeah, you just have to persevere through it. Call me Bert. Currently in sales ops strats, what ops do you see? Should you go for? Yeah, so I mean, if you're at like a top tech company, I'm not sure what company you're at right now, internal transfer is typically what I almost always like recommend. Like the barrier to entry is a good bit lower doing an internal transfer versus applying externally. But if you're looking at external positions, you can definitely think about like what software and tools you're using on the sales ops side, right? Maybe, for example, like if you're doing a lot of things within like Salesforce or Tableau, both of those companies actually have, very big sales teams, and they absolutely would value someone who has the day-to-day experience of someone in the sales ops role doing strategy, or sales strategy role. So you already have a lot of knowledge in terms of like what the buyer persona is looking for and what they're looking for on the software side. So that's the kind of like line of thinking I would go down with someone in your position. Yep, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, both of those for sure. Yeah, if you have that expertise, like it would make a lot more sense to apply to like an analytics company or even to like Tableau or Salesforce as opposed to like, some like random like managed like cloud database startup. Like, in that case, like none of your background would really translate over there. Best companies to work for: pre-sales, solutions architect, fresh grad. So best companies on that side. So for new grads, bigger companies for sure. Obviously, everyone knows the big tech cloud companies. They're going to be kind of the cream of the crop, especially from like a career development perspective. So if you can actually get some of those like entry level cloud certifications, like the AWS Cloud Practitioner, Professional Architect, Google Cloud Platform, Microsoft Azure, they have their certifications too. That's gonna get you. That's gonna elevate your profile for sure. And they do have entry level positions, new grad positions for kind of like these pre-sales solutions architect roles. Fun. Tom, the quality's pristine. Thanks, man. First day with using the A7S3 for the stream, so I'm excited. I had to get like one of these capture cards. I've never done like streaming before. I've only just done it like through the phone, but I'm already like loving this thing. Like I was like setting up these like integrations here. I got my like screen sharing set up, and it's a game changer. If you want to see like also like check this out, guys. So here's this is what it like looks like with the webcam. So the webcams, it's not bad, right? I guess maybe it's okay, but I mean, come on. This is definitely worth like what, five grand I think I spent for the setup, right? But anyway, and I can like zoom in and everything. Like this is all new to me, and I'm streaming actually on Instagram and YouTube at the same time. I'm not sure if anyone's commenting on Instagram, but if you guys are on Instagram and on YouTube, sorry, I'm not looking at those chats. I'm focusing on the TikTok chat, so feel free to hop over on the TikTok live stream, and you'll get your questions on here. I don't know, there might be a way for me to like do the YouTube comments and the Instagram comments here, but these are just the comments that are being updated from TikTok. If you have experience at a startup, can you jump into FANG? Yeah, actually most people who get into FANG, they do not get into FANG as a new grad. So people that don't know, FANG is like the really big tech companies. So Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Google, NVIDIA. That's kind of like typically what the A's, FANG, whatever stands for. Obviously, it's a little different. Companies have changed their names. Facebook is now Meta. Google is now Alphabet. But anyway, for those companies, they do hire new grads, but the vast majority of people who get in, they get in at like the entry level roles, but they have like 2 to 4 years of experience at a startup or another company. So when I joined Google, I had like 4 years of experience, and only one person on my team it was like 60 people. Only one person, I think, had like less than a year of experience. Everyone else was like 3 to 5 years of experience. So is the degree helpful at all for tech sales? If you have a computer science degree, yeah, that's definitely gonna be helpful. Otherwise, the real benefit you'll get actually from a degree is more from a networking perspective. So if you go to like a top university or you go to a school with a big alumni network, that's going to actually be a big help from getting referrals. Like that's my favorite way to get referrals is utilizing that alumni networks. Like I went to the University of Illinois for my undergrad and for my MBA, and there's a ton of alumni at all the big tech companies. So it's like the easiest entry point. Like when I reach out to people on LinkedIn and say like, hey, interested in hearing more about like your role at this company, I'm exploring this other potential position you have. I also went to U of I, so you use that as a common ground. That's like a foundation of like getting referrals. You don't want to just like come in random. You want to have some sort of kind of common point to build a connection on, right? Because you only have like a few messages to send before they don't respond or lose interest. Did I start as an AE at Google, or did I have to restart at the BDR level? So at Google, it was a little bit of a different role. So I had already had closing experience, and then just before Google, I went to a cybersecurity startup as a sales engineer. And when I joined Google, it was like a kind of a hybrid between a sales engineer and it wasn't even like BDR, because we had a separate BDR SDR team. It was more like, I guess it was like inside sales or hybrid sales. So we had like two sellers that were like based out of Austin. Then we were supposed to have a sales engineer. My area didn't have a sales engineer, so I did both roles. And then also like a field rep in territory. But we actually all three of like the sellers were closing and owning opportunities from start to finish. It's kind of a weird model. They actually got rid of it like shortly after I left, probably because there was just way too much overlap. But yeah, no, I didn't start at the SDR level. But I did get in at like a level 3, and it was like for that role it was like level 3 or level 4, and I think I was like on the edge for 3 or 4. Pretty much everyone in that role was 3 or 4. Then if you wanted to go higher than that, you had to move into a different role, different job family. Opinion on working extra hours at the end of the month if you haven't hit monthly quota. Yeah, so I mean, it depends on what you're selling, right? So if you're selling something that has, an 8-week buying cycle, right, from start to finish, realistically, the extra time you put in at the end of the month is not going to make a difference, because you're not going to be closing any new business, right? You might be, the only thing you'll close is stuff that's already in your pipeline. That's even closable, right? So if you still have extra time, or you're not following up with all your opportunities that are closable, then yeah, absolutely. Put in those extra hours, because you want to hit your number and you want to exceed your number. People who aren't in sales maybe don't know this, but you get accelerators when you exceed your quota. So every dollar that you bring in after your quota, you're actually earning multiples on your commission. So at my last role at Amazon, it was like 9x accelerators. So every additional percent in quota attainment was an additional 9% of my on-target commission. So for me, my on-target commission was like 120K or something, right? So every additional 1% in quota attainment was another like 13 grand or whatever, paycheck. And I ended up hitting like 100, it was like 128%. So, ended up like quadrupling my commission or whatever. Or I guess it was like tripling, I think, yeah. Is a cloud solutions architect CSA role at Microsoft a good career to go versus sales engineer? Yeah, so at like Microsoft and a lot of other companies, so they have, titles will change, but the CSA at Microsoft is a sales engineer. So you do have so in my mind, you have sales engineers and solutions architects. Titles will change, but you'll have the one that's more sales focused, and their bonus is based on revenue. So it's a commission based bonus. And then you'll have like the more technical ones, the architects or whatever. they will not be on a commission structure usually, and they'll be kind of more of an overlay covering multiple accounts as opposed to like sales engineer being tied to a specific area. So the CSA at Microsoft is a sales engineer. This is one of those things where it helps to understand how all these roles fit together, fit together, because companies will have different naming structures and even different supporting structures too, right? In some places, a sales engineer might be only supporting one AE, account executive. In other places, there might be a pool of sales engineers and they get pulled in as needed into different accounts. So, but no, yeah, it's a great career for sure. And it's equivalent to the sales engineer. How many deals is it supposed to take to close a deal from discovery, pricing to close? I mean, that's a hard one. It depends on like the product. So I've sold stuff that was more transactional. So in that case, you could close it in like one or two calls. And other ones that I've done, like these very complex platforms that require a lot of buy-in from the customer and lengthy pilots. I don't know. I mean, one of them, I think it was like almost like 12 months for the deal, like this specific one. It must have been at least like 40 calls or whatever, right? But then I was also a sales engineer, so doing a lot of like check-ins with the customer and stuff. Just got hired at Salesforce. Any tips on how to succeed as a BDR? For sure. So don't try to reinvent the wheel. Identify who the top performing BDRs, SDRs are, and try to like reuse and identify like what are they doing differently than their peers. Are their scripts better? Are their cadences better? Are they targeting different folks within these companies? So narrow that down. And the BDR SDR role, it's all about like volume, right? It's a volume role, right? So as long as you do you put in the work and you're targeting the right folks, then you should be able to hit your number. It's different than AE. Once you're at the account executive level, you have to be a lot more strategic, because you can definitely spin your wheels. You can put in a lot of activity and not get anywhere. But BDR SDR is more forgiving as long as you put that in there. In my experience, what percentage of reps hit quota? In my experience, it depends on the year, because sometimes there's macroeconomic factors that you can't control. Like last year, a lot of reps didn't hit their number. Or in 2020, a lot of reps didn't hit their number because quotas were set based on what was happening at the beginning of the year, and then lockdowns completely changed everything. But on average, it's like 50-60% of the reps, are hitting their number. And but that's not to say that like 50 or 60% of the reps are never hitting their number. A lot of times what happens is like you'll hit one quarter and then you'll miss the next quarter or something like that. It'll be very close. Especially at the bigger companies, they're pretty accurate in terms of like forecasting and quota setting. So they have like a whole team, set to, assigning quotas, right? And the sales managers, it's not in their best interest to create unreasonable quotas, right? Because if they do, they're not going to hit their quota, because their quota is a combination of all the AEs that they're managing, right? So based on that logic, it typically ends up being around 50 or 60%, because sales managers want to hit their quota, but then also like, they have targets that they have to hit too. So they're not going to get like a super easy number, right? It's going to be something that's like achievable. And then so that's why like typically about 50-60% will hit, and then on average like the sales managers will either get really close to hitting their quota or they'll like just miss it. Should you stay near the SF office? Taxes be killing my paycheck. I mean, if you can get like a transfer, for sure. I mean, you could move to like Seattle, Washington. Or like Texas. Where they have lower property taxes or lower income taxes. A lot of times actually nowadays, like they won't adjust your pay down, which is good. And if they could do that, then yeah, sure. Because you could always like fly back and visit the office, but it kind of depends on like where your leadership team is. Are they actually going in the office a lot? And then where your customers are based too. Feels like BDRs always have lofty goals. Yeah, so BDR is a little different in terms of goals being lofty, because the metrics are a bit more subjective, right? It's based on activity, opportunities generated, but the opportunities generated aren't necessarily revenue, right? So they can be a bit more, and then the managers, right? The SDR managers don't have a revenue goal themselves, so they can absolutely be more lofty in terms of like the goals that they're setting versus when you're account executive, your manager is being held accountable to your thing. Like if you don't hit your number, it hurts your manager. If you're an SDR and you don't hit your number, it's not really going to affect your SDR manager's pay, if that makes sense. Best way to negotiate an AE offer. Best way for sure, and this is just like in tech in general, best way is to get competing offers. If you don't have competing offers, you don't really have much leverage. So you should be interviewing at multiple places at the same time, lining them up as closely as you can. You need to be a little strategic. You might have to delay some of the interviews. Like if they give you a 1 week window for scheduling your interview, that means you might schedule some of the interviews later, just because it'll make it closer to your other ones. But for sure, that's the best way to get leverage. The other way to negotiate offers is don't just focus on one single aspect of the offer. Like don't get too hung up on like the base salary, especially if it's like a startup, right? They can be more forgiving on the sign-on bonus. If they're not offering one, you can ask for a sign-on bonus. They might be more forgiving on stock or equity. And you can also, I've done this in the past, you could also pre-negotiate a raise, like a probation type raise. So like one of the companies, startups I was at, I wanted them to go higher on the base salary, but they weren't comfortable paying that off the bat. But we came to an agreement where after 3 months, if I performing at the level that they're expecting, they would give me, I think it was a $40K base raise, and then ended up hitting that. So it worked out and it was great. We already had it pre-negotiated. You don't have to ask for it after the fact. Speedy recovery, allergies. A little bit of allergies. I think it's like sinuses and stuff. Also, here in Chicago, we're in this middle of the season shift, and that always gets me too. But fortunately not sick, which is great. Thoughts on multi-enterprise software? Will companies adapt to that, or they'll stay sharing inside 4 walls? So when you say like multi-enterprise, do you mean like collaboration software? Best practices when networking. So I'll get back to that question. Best practices when networking. So best practices, like have a clear goal in mind. Like, are you just trying to get information about the company and the role? Are you trying to get a referral? Are you potentially trying to develop a business relationship? So keep that in mind, but also don't make it one-sided when you're networking, right? It should be like a give and a take, right? So don't just like go ahead and message someone and say like, hey, can you give me a referral, right? So you got to keep that in perspective. Those are some of the best practices. And also like other thing would be like if you get like an introduction, make sure you always like thank the person in like the message, and also thank them afterwards for the introduction too. There's all these like small like etiquette things. Anyway, so collaboration, yeah. So I think we'll definitely be seeing more collaboration, right? I mean, that's why like Slack has been growing a lot because they have like the cross enterprise collaboration. Companies are being more and more dispersed and remote, and I think a lot of people just don't like email as much anymore. So yeah, absolutely, cross enterprise collaboration is. I think it's not going away. How are you getting attention, the C-suite's attention in today's market? So the only way, really, I think, in my opinion, to get attention from the C-suite is you need to be very aligned in terms of like what they care about, right? So executives, CEOs, they care about how can they keep the company growing at the rate that they're growing at or faster, right? So they're not going to be like super specific on like going deep into the weeds on like the pricing of the software or even like the profitability in some cases, right? They're thinking about like growth. Also, if they're a publicly traded company, look at the 10Ks. You can see the direct statements from the company in terms of like what are their key priorities, right? So CEOs, just like any other role, their performance is being measured. but they're kind of working with the board to define like how that is going to be measured. So they might have key initiatives or key projects. So the closer you can align to those, the better your chances are of getting like the executive's attention, right? So I got my MBA like 2 years ago, and I think one of the biggest things that I took away from it was just getting a better understanding in terms of like what are all the considerations that executives have at like these big big companies and big organizations, right? So to me, it was definitely beneficial just to get that perspective. All right, these are great questions. I'm glad that the live was working out. Hopefully, it wasn't too glitchy or anything. Let me know, like, what you guys think. Was there any issues with the live in terms of like the stream cutting out or anything? Because I might have to like modify some of the settings here. I'll have to play around with that. But I'm also excited to see like how this is going to turn out on the recording, because I post the recordings of these on YouTube after the fact. So I think this will turn out nicely. And I know it was streaming on Instagram, I think, at the same time too. But oh, and look at that! I forgot to set a little icon or a noise or whatever for the like goal. But thanks for clicking likes. Really appreciate it. We killed that goal. I don't know if like the new follower thing, maybe I didn't set that up right, but one follower, but that's okay. In my opinion, in my experience, these things plateau for a bit and they pick up. But yeah, thanks everyone again. I'm gonna be on tomorrow as well. So this one started a little bit later. I was doing some setup on this configuration. It's a bit more involved than like just doing it on like the iPhone or whatever. That's what I was doing before. But look at that. I got like the autofocus. Get a nice little like blur there. But anyway, no, not getting distracted. But yeah, I'll be on tomorrow, 9 p.m. Central. Let's see. Salvo Bob, do you have one question? You have an associate account executive offer with AWS. You're 1 year in sales went from BDR to SDR. That sounds great. So, what's the question with the offer? You'll definitely be a closing role. You'll be an AE, and it's not an easy role. But if you were able to make that role from BDR to SDR, and then you get in as an associate account executive, so it depends on like what part of AWS that you're in, but it should be a closing role. And then last one, best superbike. BMW S1000RR. I had a 2014, loved it. Had like an Austin Racing, full exhaust tune. It was like just about like 200 horsepower at the wheels. Absolutely insane bike. It would throw like fireballs out the exhaust because I had the quick shifter. If I was to get another super bike, it'd probably be another S1000RR, but I also like the Panigale V4R. It'd be tough to pick between the two there. And AWS. AWS is. It's like any other big company. And your experience is going to vary greatly based on your manager and based on your specific territory. So it's hard to say whether or not it's good or no. People have good experiences and they also have bad experiences. So. And then and last one. What do I think about the Tesla yoke design? So that's the new steering wheel. It's a little weird. I do a lot of one hand driving. So the one thing that you can't really do on it is like when you're exiting a turn and then you just let the wheel slip in your hand. You can't really do that with the yoke, but other than that, like I drive in a parking garage, I park on the 10th floor, and it hasn't been, it took me maybe like 15 minutes to get used to it. The biggest thing is like the turn signals are on the buttons on the steering wheel, and that's a little odd, and the horn is on there too, instead of like in the middle, but you learn pretty quickly, so I have no regrets with the car at all. But thanks everyone. Have a great night. And then I say this every time. Maybe I actually will do it because I have this nicer recording. I'll get this posted on YouTube, and I'm also excited to see if I can like cut clips from this because it's higher quality now on the recording. But thanks everyone. Have a great night.